Hi everybody, my name is Kim Winter. I'm your host today. Thanks for joining us. Before I forget, please go to Logistics Executive TV on YouTube to see the other podcasts that we're producing. Today I'm joined by Scott Phillips. Scott is the Global Supply Chain and Sourcing Director for Ekko Global Shoe Production and Sourcing. Ekko, really interesting organisation that Scott will tell us about today. Scotty, welcome and thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks, Kim. Thanks for having me. Much of a pleasure.
Great. So Ekko is a mega player in the global shoe industry and a Danish business, multi-billion-dollar organisation. Quite interesting in as much that you guys pretty much run the end-to-end supply chain yourselves. So by all means, tell us about the organisation and give us a bit of an intro into Ekko.
Yeah, Ekko is a unique business within the shoe industry. It is vertically integrated. It's a Danish company, still privately owned, around over a euro billion-dollar revenue company. So we are a big player. We own all of our assets from end to end. So we make our own leathers, we make our own shoes in our own manufacturing sites around the world, and we also retail our own product in our own operated retail environment. We also have a growing e-commerce platform, and along with other customers and shops around with wholesalers and distributors, we service about 88 markets globally with our brand. So we're still a growing company, 55 years old, but growing, been extremely successful in the recent decade. So if you haven't tried a pair of Ekko shoes, get into a store. A shameless plug. Get a pair on your feet. You'll never turn back, as Kim knows.
I can certainly vouch for the product. I've been wearing them for years, Scott, as you know, and wouldn't be caught without a pair of any, whether they be business or casual or anything else. Really, really comfortable product. So, Scott, tell us a little bit about, you have a significant role to play in the organisation globally. Tell us a little bit about the way the pandemic has impacted on the business. And maybe from there we can explore some of the activities that have taken place since.
Yeah, it's been an owner-operated sort of vertical supply chain. We don't have really anywhere we can go when crisis hits. We have to be responsible for our own supply chain. So we had a significant challenge, especially when COVID really got taking in a lot of countries. We operate in countries such as Indonesia, Thailand, Vietnam, China. Also, we have operations in India and Europe. With our customers across the globe and retail basically shutting down with all these lockdowns around the world, we had a big challenge to manage our inventory, not just upstream with materials and how we manage our manufacturing, but also then the downstream into the markets and where we store inventory and how we actually cut up the pie on what's going where and where we need it. Our demand forecasting, for example, was thrown out the window. We just had to roll with the punches. As markets went down, as markets came back, we had to have inventory in the right position. So it was a significant challenge. We couldn't just turn to our supplier and say, no more purchase orders. We cut our commitment, we cut our buy, because that's cutting ourselves as well. So it was a really delicate operation to manage the supply chain through that period.
So thanks for that. And knowing a fair bit about your supply chain, having kept up with the news about what Ekko's been doing over recent years, and again, the extensive degree to which the organisation controls much of its own supply chain, quite unusually for many companies of your type. Do you think you were ready for something like this? I mean, how do you assess how ready you were for what happened, and what were the results of that readiness or otherwise?
Yeah, that's a great question, Kim. And any supply chain that says we're fully ready and expected a crisis to come along the size of COVID-19, I think maybe a little bit above themselves. I certainly think we had aspects of our supply chain we were ready for, aspects we were not, and caught us by surprise. I think a lot of the work we did especially after the Thailand floods in 2011, on our risk mitigation plan, our geographical diversity of supply, and how we understand our supply chain and the brand of our supply chain was super critical leading up to January, February this year, when China really got hit, and we shut our factories down in China, and our raw material sourcing started to get disrupted. So I say a lot of aspects, again, we were prepared because we had structured our supply chain, which fits our brand. So we're not a lean supply chain. We have a lot of geographical diversity in our supply. We have a lot of dual sourcing on our materials. We have a lot of differentiation in our markets that we can sell into as well. And along that, the branding of our supply chain, I think, has really created the baseline behind being able to help survive in the past 6 months.
Okay. So the geographical diversity that you talk about, I suppose, would be akin to what most organisations would see as being nearshoring, in effect. Your geographical diversity was driven by what factors? Because pre-COVID, you were already there in that part of your supply chain. What were the drivers behind that?
Yeah, I think twofold. The owner's vision of having consistent supply constantly. So all our factories can make a variety of product. So we're not reliant. We don't have dependencies on a single factory. And I think that came home to roost when Thailand, we had the floodings in Thailand in 2011, which was our biggest factory at the time. We had a huge disruption to our supply and defaulting on delivery into markets just as we're going through a big growth curve. And that's spawned a strategy of saying, one factory can only have a certain amount of capacity, and our semi-specialization within those factories need to be more diversified. So we have skill sets to run the same technical products in multiple sites. So with that strategy, whilst it costs a little bit extra, especially when there's no crisis and we become more lean, because eventually we have to pass the cost on. But as we saw at the beginning of this crisis, we were able to move product in and out of different manufacturing sites very quickly to be able to maintain, what the markets were going to demand when they open back up. So that was a really big advantage, but there is a cost that you have to carry, and that's the brand of our supply chain that we go with to minimise risk. Okay.
So when the pandemic struck in the various countries where there were lockdowns, from the perspective of where your business units are, how did that impact, and what sort of percentage, or how many of your business units could afford to have people working from home as opposed to the manufacturing and other elements where they needed to be hands-on? How did that work out?
Yeah, obviously different aspects and different parts of the supply chain. So upstream, our material supply was getting impacted. Obviously, if factories are locked down or the logistics in and out of that area is locked down, we started to see dependencies on certain parts of our supply chain that were creating disruption. Our factories, luckily, none of them had to permanently shut, although we did take a week out in China, in our factory in China, straight after Chinese New Year, due to the government lockdown across China. We were able to ramp up China factory to 100% within 3 weeks after it was locked down. So that caused disruption, but not significant. Then our offices around the world, more of our corporate offices and our sales offices, yes, we had to work from home, including our office here in Singapore. Everyone was working from home for 2 months. That was a challenge, a different challenge. I guess our biggest impact, though, was in our retail environment, where we had to use different tactics such as furloughing and things like this, because our shops were shut all around the world. At one stage, we had around 80% of all of our retail closed down for a week. So luckily that's reversed now, and we see only very small pockets of retail being closed. But at the same time, getting the machine started again on that end was a real challenge.
And from your perspective within the organisation, how did you organise from a management or executive level in terms of communication? Was there new paradigms of communication set up for meetings with those working from home? And who was leading those elements of communication within the company?
Yes, definitely an increased communication was a natural outcome. The fact that we couldn't see each other day to day and meet each other at the coffee machine, the water cooler, whatever. We take those things for granted now, or we did before, we don't now. So we had a natural increase in communication. A lot of it was led by supply chain and resources across supply chain. The cadence of replanning all of our demand and supply was 3, 4, 5 times what we would normally do. So we'd have almost weekly planning cycles rather than monthly planning cycles at some stages. Keeping even the lowest level staff engaged and communicated to was daily. So we really had to ramp up our messaging in what we were communicating, being very transparent in what was happening, being real about the impacts that this was having, because we didn't want rumours, we didn't want problems, we didn't want inconsistent messages going out, because the next week everything would change again. And this was something we took for granted before the crisis, that level of communication goes missing with emails and with these complacencies in the common workplace. Since we've come back, Kim, this has changed a lot as well. We've continued these daily meetings, especially with our functional teams, to make sure we're just checking in what's happening. If nothing's happening, we move on. And we've uncovered a lot of really good initiatives along that way.
Thanks. And did you see was the cream rising to the top? We hear much about organisations finding out that they have heroes in their business, and they find out that when these sort of pressures are put on to the organisation, that a lot of organisations that we've seen in the media are very surprised and pleased about the fact that people have stepped up and doing more hours, they're more productive. What was the general sense of understanding in your business, one way or the other? Were you finding that there were improvements across the board in productivity? Were people working longer, or was it pretty much the same?
It's hard to judge when you're working from home and you're not in factories and you're not seeing material suppliers, you're not seeing your freight forwarders in person anymore. So it's hard to judge from that angle. But certainly we had a lot of people who obviously put hard yards in to keep the business running and having to think differently, having to cultivate a different mindset. The decision making, we had to do more from the gut rather than the analytics. Our systems and our processes were almost not made redundant, but an example there I'll give, Kim, we threw most of our supply chain KPIs in the bin for 6 months because they became irrelevant. They became something that we would focus on that didn't drive any value from what the outcome was. Our delivery performance was dropping down to 60%. We'd normally sit up in the mid to high 90s. So what does that mean? Should we panic about this, or do we understand the context we're within? And from that, I think people really went, okay, there's no KPIs that we're looking at and being judged on, so we get on with making decisions. So we went more to the exploratory decision-making rather than the formal decision-making hierarchy process that we had previously. And that gave us a real view into how people work and who was able, the old school hands-on management rather than the system control process, almost mind-numbing analytics that we can get into these days. So we saw some real good talent come through that we wouldn't have given or seen come through before. And we also found a few people out and we have to deal with that performance in the aftermath as well. Overall, our people in our business, I think, have performed exceptionally well to keep the business up and running and be able to mitigate all the problems that we've found. And the mood, the culture of the company is still very positive, still quite energetic. And we're getting more and more people back into the office. We can see that, they're re-engaged again, looking forward to getting back on the growth path.
You talk about mindset there for a while, and do you find that the mindset of the organisation now, or the people in it, is much more tuned to expectation of disruption? Do people see the pandemic, which of course we're still in, being an ongoing thing, or do they think it's something that's finite and then we can go back to normal? Is there going to be such a normal back in your organisation, do you think?
Is there going to be a new normal? I don't know, Kim, is that a statement that you're asking?
Yeah. What's your view?
I hope so, and I hope not, in two ways. I hope so because we can get on with some of the innovation projects. I hope not, because this has been a really interesting process to get back to some old school skill sets. The mindset, I think the best way I can put this is the mindset we tried to keep very transparent, very open. So we really leveled out the hierarchy as flat as we could, empower people to get on with things and make decisions, which we may not have normally done. And we did that with a real mindfulness around being in the moment. So yes, we are in a crisis. Yes, we don't know how long it's going to last for. It may be over tomorrow. It may be over in 2 years. We don't know. Standing back in March, we're probably thinking by summer in Europe we can be over this and get on with a nice holiday and then on with the business. So here we are post summer in Europe, pretty much, and we're not through it. So we've had to be really in the moment, in the context of where we are, and consistently adjusting. Having gratitude towards our employees as well has been really a big thing. Giving them encouragement and saying thank you for even the small tasks that they wouldn't normally do, I think has been helpful. And lastly, and this is something I think we lack in generalist supply chain industry, is having some levels of empathy around what's actually happening in people's lives, stuck at home or being impacted by their partners potentially losing jobs or something like this, family restrictions, not being able to see their families, and trying to understand that and being part of that with them, because we're also part of it as leaders, and being empathetic to that, I hope is going to have some long-lasting impact on the business in the future.
I know you've always been very, very big on diversity, in terms of, just because you're such a multinational organisation for one, but your personal philosophy has always been around diversity within the organisation, gender, cultural diversity.
Yep.
Do you think that philosophy and that approach that you've had has been an asset during this time of real pressure and crisis? And if so, how's that played out?
I think, Kim, it's always an asset, not just during a crisis. Having diversity in the organisation and through the working functional groups is always important. In a crisis, it even comes to the fore more. We saw, people being able to take different steps, different ideas, different decisions because of their backgrounds. So we don't have all the one sort. So we had differences of opinions. So our planning team here in Singapore is all women, for example, which is mostly good during a crisis. Really good, because they're very pragmatic and I'm talking very generally, so I have to be a bit careful, Kim. But they got on with the task, tick things off, and we didn't find any issues. Of course, when they're in the office together, there's a bit more gossip and a bit more, this and this and this, and that's a bit of fun as well. Also, the nationalities we have in our team, range from Western cultures to Eastern cultures, and that creates a different link of thinking. And when you have no formal rules anymore because you're in crisis and you have to think on your feet, you get a lot of things coming to the surface where you go, oh, yeah, I haven't thought of that. Let's explore quickly and get on with it. So I think diversity, both in cultures and also gender and And these type of things is always an asset, but especially helped out in the last 6 months, especially around that planning aspect, when we're replanning every day, every week, our entire footprints.
Keeps everybody on their toes.
Certainly me, Kim. So,
so if you were to look back from the helicopter view, Scott, and over the last, I don't know, 4 6 months, and you were to say what were the greatest learnings that you could call upon and overview, and so the things that we really picked up most that are going to help us moving forward, or to help us deal in the moment with what happened and what has happened so far, what would you point to those as being?
Oh, first of all, Kim, I don't know. I hope we don't. You don't. I don't. And the next generation don't have to deal with such a crisis again so soon. I think that's been extremely disruptive, and I don't know where that leaves the next generation. So let's for sake of good order say that we don't have another global pandemic for another good period of time, 15, 20 years. But the reality is we probably will, and we have to learn very fast what we know now, what we didn't know 6 months ago. So first thing is habits. Old habits die hard, right? I think we all know as we get older, we prefer the comfort zone rather than not. And we have to, no matter how old we are, no matter how mature our supply chain is, no matter how mature our business is, we have to kill those old bad habits while we have a chance. I think that will help us move on very quickly. As I said, we threw away all our KPIs, for example. So as we bring them back into today's business, we're reviewing a lot. Is this valuable? Do we need this KPI? Does it give us any advantage to review this KPI, or use this KPI for decision making in the future? This is not new stuff. This is some academia through here to say KPIs are redundant, whatever. Now we should look at other things, but we're bringing less KPIs back in. That means something to us. I think some other things, Kim, that we've learned is around our dependencies. So we found some really dark areas of our supply chain that we took for granted, some small parts that we were extremely dependent on, but we didn't pay any attention to, and that caught us out. So we had a reliance on some technical expertise out of India, for example, in Ekko the last 6 months. And when India locked down, they really locked down hard. So there was no in or out for 2 or 3 weeks in their ports out of Chennai. And we were really hamstrung with, just a few $1 million of business that was impacting, a huge amount of business globally for us. So those dark corner dependencies, we need to now not be complacent with them and understand them more and more, and find the strategies around giving them some life in the future about, we can mitigate risk. We touched on people as well, right? So having the right people in the right areas with the right mix, this is something we've got to keep working on daily, every day. Look in the mirror and are we doing the right things? Are we giving our people the right conditions? Are we got the right people in the right positions? And not be scared to adjust during not only crisis, but even in good times, not to become complacent with people development.
So just on that, Scott, you've got a reputation as a strong coach and mentor in terms of people development within your organisation. What would be the key 2 or 3 things that you look for in a skill set or characteristics when you're encouraging or inviting or recruiting people to join the organisation? What were those key elements that, as a leader, that you're looking for in the organisation?
First and foremost, we're looking for a person with a not necessarily a skill set, but actually understanding their own personality, understanding they've been honest to themselves, because that will help us understand whether they'll fit into the business or not. So we cultivate an organisational culture around what we have, but we also need to be able to understand how we bring people into that culture. So I see lots of Singapore's a melting pot of great education. So everyone in Singapore coming out of university or school is well educated. However, the people who really understand who they are and what they can deliver and what value they can bring, not only on the skill set side because they're all educated, but also on the on who they are as a person, how they fit into how the working style. That's who we'll bring into the organisation, and then we give them opportunity, and then we give them development, and then we're quite patient with them. And good people come and go in an organisation, and we have to accept that as well, Kim. We can't expect everyone to stay around forever. Being an older, more mature company from Denmark, where we have employees that are still here from day one, that are still retiring, they've been 40, 50 years in the business, is amazing. It's exceptional. We need to learn from them and respect that. But at the same time, bringing new blood in, we make sure they fit. So if you can be really honest with yourself and who you are and what you can bring, and we can find that fit with the business and the culture that we have, then we'll give opportunity, development, and time for them to develop into what they can be, what they can maximise themselves to be. And that helps with us being very fit to change our organisation as well, Kim. So we can't just get stuck in the same way by having the same people with the same ideas day in, day out. And that's how we're going to move into the future.
Well, thanks, Scott. I mean, we really appreciate you sharing your insights with us today. I know you've been right in the front line. You're a very hands-on operator inside the business with a very wide range of executives and staff inside your business. Just to wrap up, I'd like to pan back out a little bit from the pandemic and your business in particular, just in general terms as a strong business leader. Perhaps just a couple of tips from you for organisations and other leaders, whether they be from smaller organisations or large-scale enterprises, organisations that have struggled or are really struggling to kick on and to kickstart and to work their way through where we are now for the next few months and the next year in business. Any tips from your perspective, whether you carry experience with you for over many years or in recent times, just in terms of what leaders should be focusing on over the next 6 to 12 months to really drive their enterprises forward?
Yeah, I think over-communicating right now is super important, Kim. So even if the message may be irrelevant to 50% of the people you're communicating to, it doesn't matter. I mean, information is so important right now, and as it moves so quickly, things are changing so often, whether it be supply chain or organisations or borders opening up, people being able to see or be with family, for example. So just over-communicate messages and facts. And be honest with it and be transparent. I think that's really helped us in the business, but also personally myself in my family situation as well. Has helped get through this period when it was quite tough, especially in lockdown. Be open to new ideas right now. So those projects that you've stopped because you're just trying to run the business, go back and review them, spend some time going back and get out of the daily grind of just trying to keep going at the moment and reset. So reset your SNOP, for example. So take the learnings from what you have, look at your SNOP, don't stop your SNOP. I've seen a few businesses, Kim, that are shutting their SNOP or their IPV down at the moment because they think there's no point. The information's flawed because of the crisis we're in. This is, I think, is the wrong direction. We need to get back into our SNOP, get back to our projects, get back to think about innovation. This is really important, not for tomorrow, but for 6, 12, even longer, 5 years time for the business to be back in the spotlight, in the sunshine. And then most of it just show some compassion and empathy to everyone. We're all going through difficult times right now. We're all stuck either in a country and we can't see families. A lot of us have the privilege to work in international businesses as expatriates. And that privilege is now being tarnished with the fact that we can't move. So everyone has a story. We need to be empathetic to those stories and understand what they're going through. But at the same time, once we understand, we get back to business and make sure we put the performance as much as we can on the board. So these are just some of my learnings, Kim. There's many more out there. This is Ekko's business that I've been had the privilege of riding for the last 6 months, or 6 years, but in the last 6 months on almost the supply chain on steroids, so to speak, in what we're doing. But there's a lot more learnings out there, and I'm really keen to keep learning what other people are going through, what other companies are doing. I hope I can just have shared a little bit of what we're about today.
No, I really appreciate your authenticity and your honesty in sharings from inside of your organisation. I'm sure the audience will really appreciate the guts of what you've been talking about and the openness with which you've shared it. So thank you again. We really do appreciate your time. I know you're busy, as is everybody, and I look forward to talking to you again in the future. To everybody who's joined us today, thank you for your time. I'm sure if you have any questions, then by all means in the comments section below, then if you want to address Scott, then he's easy to find on LinkedIn, Scott Phillips at Ekko, and I'm sure Scott, as part of your philosophy, you'd be more than happy to talk to people and share further insights with them. Thank you to everybody in the supply chain that's really making an effort to keep everybody across the supply chain and across the world safe and sound during this period. To all the first responders, as always, our serious respect for all the work that the first responders, health workers and government workers and police, etc., across the world are doing to keep us safe and healthy. By all means, keep an eye on what we're doing on Logistics Executive TV. It's our effort to bring more insights and more executives to the fore. Thanks again, Scott, and we look forward to catching up in Singapore.
Excellent. Thanks, guys. Stay safe and all the best.
Thank you, you too.
Cheers.
Bye.